It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. And wow, the minute I start doing this, I start getting phlegmy. I've actually had a few good days regarding voice recently. I guess we're coming out of allergy season. Thank God. Holy crap. That was like 2 months. Suck. Not that you guys care. Just letting you know that, hey, I can mostly speak again. This was a very busy week because of the crowdfunding. And we were working on a super fun video to drop on Monday. It's another silly thing, completely different silly than Comeback Our Game was. But it is very silly because, like I said, part of the thing about this particular crowdfunding campaign is we're just having fun with it because we had no idea how it was going to go doing crowdfunding in November instead of the standard time I normally do it in the spring and all that stuff. We had no idea. So it was, let's just have fun and see how it goes. I also set my YouTube channel, like YouTube settings, to dark mode. And it's so good. Anyway, you guys don't care about that. Patrons get silly stuff like this. So if you like me talking about random shit, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Okay, 3 main things came out of the feedback this week. 1, I can deal real quickly. People on Wellness Wednesday really want a video about what to do when you really screw up. Okay, noted. Have heard you. Second is the sensitivity around the whole X-Bro thing. And third was people who said, I don't watch streams, I don't watch other videos. Please give me your thoughts about GTA Trilogy. All right, cool. We'll start with the X-Bro thing. And it was interesting because there are a few main camps that the comments came into. One was, yeah, why can't we talk about the X-Bro thing? The other, well, I guess that was sort of an agreement. The ones that were a little bit pushback were, X-Bro. Another camp was, I played the Xbox 360, I guess I'm an X-Bro. And then other people who were like, I wasn't an X-Bro, leave me out of this, right? All are valid. Just because you played the Xbox 360 does not mean you're an X-Bro. I played the Xbox 360. I'm not an X-Bro. I still have my Xbox 360 plugged in because even certain back compatible titles aren't fully back compatible. There's some features you can't use on more modern Xboxes with certain Xbox 360 games, like Gears of War 2. You can't use the couch co-op feature in Gears of War 2 back compatible. So I still have my 360 plugged in. Anyway, the X-Bro was a marketing creation that was a particular type of gamer. So just because you played the Xbox 360 does not mean you're an X-Bro. And it's weird to me, and this ties in the 2 other categories of I was an X-Bro and I wasn't an X-Bro, leave me out of this. It was deliberately marketed to a certain group that they wanted to play games that either they were lapsed gamers or they hadn't played games yet because that was what nerds did. So, 10 years ago, if that marketing appealed to you, well, it was supposed to. And I assume you've grown up and evolved since then, like Dwayne Johnson did. Possibly didn't get as swole as Dwayne Johnson did compared to what he looked like back then. I don't know why I'm so... He makes himself look tiny. Freaks me out so much, but... But then there are the people who are like, I wasn't an X-Bro. Stop defining that entire damn generation by the X-Bros. And this, I think, needs more time. Because it's stupid that an entire era of gaming is defined by a marketing ploy. especially since there were PlayStation consoles and Nintendo consoles and PC and other stuff going on in the aughts, the early 2000s, right? The Xbox 360 did not define all of gaming. The PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3 kind of the PlayStation 3 came out a year after the 360, but they were still there. And by the end of that console cycle, the PlayStation 3 had caught up to the Xbox 360 in sales, and that's with assholes like me buying 3 fucking 360s because the first 2 RROD'd. And after the second one, I got my second Xbox fixed frickin' twice from that stupid red ring of death. And after the second time, I'm like, screw this. I went out and bought a, I don't like using this term, but douchey used Halo 3 Special Edition Xbox 360. It was cheap. It looks stupid. You open it up, it does a da-da-da thing. I'm like, fuck it. Every time I have to open the CD drive, but I was not paying full price for another fucking Xbox 360 because the first 2 broke. So even with that, and I had my chunky, bubbly PS3, played the crap out of that thing, played Skyrim on that thing. Surprised I didn't cack that thing based on how poorly Skyrim ran on that console. But I had that PlayStation 3 until I loaned it to a friend of mine who was in the hospital. And this is a really sad story. He actually died while he was in the hospital, and I never got my PlayStation 3 back. That's what happened to my PlayStation 3. But that thing ran. I mean, I'm obviously much more sad that my friend died than what happened to my PlayStation 3 and all my games that I lent him. But he died, so that's okay. There are worse things. But that's what happened to my PlayStation 3. So my big, bubbly PlayStation 3 worked until that happened. So if other people are like me and bought 3 Xbox 360s and only 1 PlayStation 3, then, you know, that pissed me off about that era, because Xbox was basically being rewarded in sales for selling shit. But I know a lot of people bought the slim line. I know some people's PS3s broke. All I know is mine. Maybe I got lucky, but I played the crap out of that thing, and it lasted, and it was back compatible. So I'm like, woohoo, PlayStation 2 games too. But the Xbox 360 did not define that era the way so many people talk about it. Like, yes, it was, this one person said, shooty box system. It was the one associated with, yes, Halo, and then Gears of War, which I loved. I love the original Gears trilogy. Did not love Judgment, and I've been ever since. There have been great moments, but I don't know, Gears 4 and 5 just haven't captured the magic of the original Gears trilogy to me. But anyway, yes, you know, Call of Duty and even Mass Effect was a timed exclusive. That was sort of a quasi-shooter. But there was more to gaming than that. I mean, the Uncharted franchise got started back then, and God of War was still going. There were entire other streams that were not in sync with the marketing. And culture critics are not supposed to judge an era in history solely by its commercials. What I think happened was that influx of the ex-bro so traumatized everybody else, because let's face it, the ex-bro was the guy who bullied us in school, right? And gaming was our escape from the guy who bullied us in school, because the guy who bullied us in school didn't play those games, and all of a sudden, oh shit, trauma, right? You know, everybody's still fucked up by it, clearly, but that doesn't mean, you know, that doesn't mean you're completely unaccountable for judging an entire console era by what was, yes, a sizable minority, but still a minority. If you chalk up all the Nintendo, PlayStation, PC gamers, and the people who played Xbox but who were not X-Bros, those people well outnumber the X-Bros. The X-Bros did not define gaming back then, and people need to stop acting like they did. It was a misguided attempt to make gaming cool, and all it did was give gaming this reputation for being full of that guy that you can't stand. And that reputation has dogged gaming ever since. The same way before that, it was, a handful of titles like Mortal Kombat and Resident Evil, which, I'm sorry, still weren't as violent as everybody made them out to be. It was goofy violence. It was the sound design in those games that really made them compelling to me. The sound in the original Resident Evil is fantastic. It's art based on what they had to work with. It used emptiness really well and isolated sounds. Anyway, I'm nerdy. But the graphics, they're not, it was like jam coming out of people's necks, right? It's ridiculous going back and looking at it now, but, oh my God, it's gonna turn kids into killers. I was a teenager when Mortal Kombat came out and Resident Evil came out, and I was obsessed with those games. I played Resident Evil until that shit gave me nightmares. The hunters were still jumping at me in my sleep. But and that's why to this day I say the issue with youth and violent video games is not that it'll turn into killers. It may give them nightmares. Just based on my own personal experience. But obviously I am not violent. I am not pro-violence. I do not condone violence. And, I'm not an ex-bro that bullies people and mistreats women. So clearly something's wrong here. Like I said, I think it's the fact that all somebody needed was a few bad experiences on Xbox Live for that to be the most vivid memory they have of that era. I know that Xbox Live and the behavior of people on Xbox Live was what really put me off multiplayer gaming, even with friends. And it wasn't the behavior of strangers that put me off multiplayer gaming. It was those few instances where someone I really liked as a friend just became an absolute asshole in multiplayer, and I could never see them the same way again after that. And there were 2 or 3 people that I just kind of backed away from after that because they were such raving jerks in multiplayer. I'm like, who is this person really? And like I said, it only happened 2 or 3 times, but it was enough to go, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to see people differently. Who they are the rest of the time is not necessarily who they are in games, but I don't want that experience. So I stopped doing a lot of multiplayer gaming because gaming is what I use to get away from that stuff. I finally came back to Twitch this week for the same thing. I don't want conflict with other people in games. I don't want guild drama. I don't want, I just want to have happy, funny, jokey times where nothing is taken terribly seriously, right? Like just, and unless it's like, to me, there's a difference in analysis of, like I nerded out on the rest. There's nerding out, and then there's taking things too seriously, right? If you're deep diving into a game, it's like, no, I want to understand this, and you're getting really intense about it. That's that's happy, right? That's a form of enjoyment of the medium. That's not the same as getting really bent out of shape because people don't like the same things you like, or people like things you don't like, and there's way too much of that in gaming right now. And I do think some of that is leftover trauma from the whole ex-bro phenomenon. The industry did not deal with that effectively. Clearly, they took too long to set up any sort of real community standards on services like Xbox Live. But then, now, they just want to sweep it all under the rug in this weird, we were always at war with Oceania, right? Oh no, we've always been open and friendly and take safety, online safety, very seriously. No, they didn't. That's not true, right? It's like Blizzard Activision this week trying to say, we have always been committed. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. No one will convince me that Activision always had a commitment to this and that and blah, blah, because I experienced it firsthand multiple years in a row. I always dreaded going to the Activision booth at E3 because bring on the shit hose, you know? And it wasn't like EA that just treated everyone like crap. It was a joke among my colleagues, no matter what website I worked for, that EA treats you like shit unless you're Felicia Day. Just run on joke. Like, oh, there's Felicia Day. We're not getting into our predetermined appointment time because she just went in with 6 executives from EA and took our spots and did it in plain view of everybody. They didn't even have a back door that they could go in, so it wasn't obvious as to what was going on there. Happened multiple times too, right? But, Activision was just, yeah, you're a woman. We're going to put you with Toys for Bob, who are lovely. I love talking Skylanders, but, I'd like the Call of Duty behind closed doors, please. I'd like a Destiny hands-on. Oh, I have to wait 3 sessions for COD and you bumped me on Destiny and still expect me to cover it? Why would you expect me to still cover a game I hadn't played? And I remember this till the day I die, the PR person saying, well, you don't really need to play it, right? Why do you have the fucking demo there if we don't need to play it, PR person from Activision? That's how bad it was, right? And that's just one story. We don't have time for that. I've told the stories before. But, this don't piss in my ear and tell me it's raining phenomenon about stuff that, and, the Blizzard culture was coming up at the same time as X-Bros. And there was a lot of stuff going on with World of Warcraft at that time. Don't really have time to get into it, but World of Warcraft was such a phenomenon that it pulled in a lot of disparate groups, and it was almost like a best of times, worst of times thing. That I know some absolutely lovely WoW stories of people forming lasting friendships through that game, and I also know how they blacklisted me for pointing out that games, competitor games like Age of Conan and the Warhammer MMO that actually had some really interesting anti-gank stuff and what they called realm versus realm mechanics, that I don't really think that game got a fair shot because there was just subscription fatigue by the time it came out. But, the fact that WoW had no dedicated noob zone the way Age of Conan did. They didn't have anti-gank technology the way, the Warhammer MMO did. And yet they just touted the subscriber base as the reason to play WoW. And it's like, that's no excuse for not innovating. Hammered on N4G, I don't know games, what do you know, you're a girl. And this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was the first time I got seriously flamed for an article I wrote, and then I was told, don't bother trying to go to BlizzCon. You're blackballed. You criticize them. That was back then, right? When you figure that Warhammer MMO is still around, you can backtime it to when that happened. That's how long it was going on. And that was around the same time as the X-Bro was a thing. And I think part of what happened, and this goes into the last little bit that people asked, there were comments saying, I did mistreat women back then. What do I do? And this is a longer conversation. Let me know if you'd like more on this. More on this, not moron. But I had a conversation with a friend of mine about this over lunch, that the sensibilities were so different in the 2000s. And you know, a lot of people are looking back with the benefit of hindsight and go, wow, my behavior was really shitty back then. A lot of times for lesser offenses, that's enough. That's why I pointed out The Rock making fun of himself as the right thing to do. And some people said, you don't realize how sensitive some of those guys are about the whole X-Bro thing. The X-Bros are very sensitive. They don't like... I don't care. Because that was 10 years ago. More? Shit. 20 years ago. 20 years ago it started, right? 20th anniversary. If you're still not over yourself 10, 15, 20 years later, I don't care if you're mad. I don't care. I cannot dictate my conduct based on lowest common denominator people in a state of arrested development. I make content for self-aware grown-ups, and I'm quite happy to do that. It's not that I don't realize how angry people can get over this stuff. On this point, I just don't care. And I don't say that often, but in this case, I just don't care. Why? Again, they have 10 years to grow the fuck up. And I do think that the people who were terrorized by the whole X-Bro thing, and that includes other guys. I want to be really clear, because the people who said, I wasn't an X-Bro, I'd like to stop being judged that way, thanks. These are other guys saying that. And, you have to pick a side on this, because it's a binary choice. Either look back on that and say, yes, some of the behavior back then was unacceptable, or placate the people doing the unacceptable behavior. And that's not saying the people are unacceptable people. It's saying the behavior was unacceptable. And that's a binary choice. And I'm coming down with, I don't want to deny it happened, because it happened. Everybody saw it happen. But it's over. Things have gone on. And I don't like this no fun backlash that happened, because the entire industry is pretending that, a tentacle bat in Saints Row 4 had any bearing on the shitty behavior of a minority of gamers. I don't know why the game content suffered, because some idiots in real life just couldn't behave. Because that's not the game doing that. If you played a Saints Row game, that was the game that made me do a heel turn in terms of running down pedestrians. It was Saints Row 3, and it was the Shandy was a whore signs. And I was so into the mentality of being like this weird, oddly lovable, family of choice, only it's a gang, that I'm like, no, Shandy's my girl. You don't get to call Shandy a whore. Running over pedestrians with the signs. I was aiming for the guys with the signs, because you don't do that to my girl Shandy. Right? No GTA game made me want to run over pedestrians. But then you have the Genki Bowl and all that stuff too, and the whole purpose is to do that. But I thought the game really succeeded in that way. But you respected Kenzie. You eventually respected Shandy. And again, they showed that early on, no, there was really no reason to respect Shandy, right? But that's okay. There are different types of characters in a game, and some women are allowed to be flawed, just saying. But this industry reaction, because let's face it, there are still some people, a lot of people, not just at Activision, but there are some people still working in the industry that did behave badly back then. And the problem is admitting it now is kind of the kiss of death. There's no, people should be able to get out in front of things, minor things, not crimes, right? And not horrible mistreatment of employees. But people should be able to get out in front of just sort of being a generic run-of-the-mill asshole. Own it, apologize for it, and get some credit for taking the step and owning it instead of waiting to get caught. The problem is too many of these devs are going, I'm the savior of women now. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're still a loudmouth, insecure dude. You're just a different brand of loudmouth, insecure dude. Because you're still speaking for women. You're still determining what kind of content that women should want in games. And all you're doing now is dragging in your female, non-binary, and trans colleagues to push your own opinion. It's the same fucking mistake with a different coat of paint. And meanwhile, the gamers are like, what the fuck? Like, why are you taking away female characters with some substance who were allowed to be more well-rounded people than we're getting now? Why are you giving us these boring-ass facsimiles of characters we've already played and knew had more personality and telling us this is better? We know it's not better. We're 10 to 15 to 20 years older now. We're going back and playing these old games again. And, with the wisdom of those extra years going, in a lot of ways, these games were better. The characterizations of women were better. And there's a reason for that. Because it's just a bunch of guys in game dev who never actually learned, never actually grew up, just pivoted to hide the transgression while they're still committing a similar form of the transgression. And they're blaming the gamers to cover their base. It's vaguely sociopathic, but gross insecurity and sociopathy can look very similar sometimes. But it's frustrating because then, of course, what happens? These guys are involved in hiring, right? And they end up hiring women who will backstop their shitty opinions because they can't handle a woman who disagrees with them. So what do we get? An industry full of gatekept hiring where, women like, what's her name? Jen O'Neill, who's just now said, oh yeah, she was treated like shit from Blizzard, but only recently left. They hire women who will prop up the bad behavior, or they fire the ones like me who, won't take it, and then you get labeled not a team player. Or they find these women they can turn around and either they say nothing and they're happy to stay subservient because it's a job and they spend all this time and all this school getting a degree in game dev only to be treated like shit and gaslit at work, or they get women who share their backward opinions and are really loud about it, but they're not challenging status quo at all. The entire reason these women are hired is because they're agreeing with pre-existing male opinion. And that's not supposed to be the purpose of a diverse team. Which is why I'm making my own games. But I don't have a lot of time left. My thoughts on the GTA trilogy are really simple. It's a shit show. And it's an inexcusable shit show. And it's one of two things. They outsourced the port and didn't properly manage the port. And for some odd reason, nobody checked it because of the staff turnover or whatever the hell's going on there. Nobody checked it. It was a hunk of shit. Rockstar needs money for some weird reason, quick, so they knowingly shipped a broken product or a combination of both. Those are the only two explanations for that completely unnecessary, avoidable, unforced error. You know, when Rockstar previously did betas and things like that they knew were broken, they'd be like, hey, it's rough right now. We know, bear with us. It'd be a mea culpa. They'd let people know. So not only is this they're comparing it to, it's the cyberpunk of this year, but Rockstar had a really good record before this. It wasn't like, you know, it was the creative director on Witcher 2 who is the head of Cyberpunk, and you see similar habits and similar problems, and the guy clearly never learned. He just got worse from Witcher 2 to Cyberpunk. Rockstar, this came out of nowhere. It's bizarre. And so we're going to have to be watching Rockstar games very, very, very closely going forward, because this is potential, not guaranteed, but potential sign of trouble. All right. One more week to go-ish with the crowdfund. There's actually like 11 days because it's going to end on the Monday, but I'm calling it the last week so we can do the big push. And there's also Patreon. If you want to become a regular member, you can pay annually now. You don't want to do the crowdfund. You're not interested, but you want to support my stuff. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.